I'm a widow.
Oh, so you are chasing widows.
Well,
They are chasing you.
sort of sometimes. Not often anymore. The guys are here almost, except for Naomi.
Hi, Ellen. Hi,
Hey,
Naomi.
good morning, you all.
Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Good morning, boss.
Yeah.
I see your cold this morning.
You see my what?
You look like you're cold this morning. You have like a hoodie, something on.
A hoodie? No.
Mhm.
No, I got like a, like a little jacket on, I guess. Yeah.
How was your weekend?
Quiet. It was quiet but productive. Got some things done. So it was kind of nice. How about you?
Not much.
Not
I'm
much.
quiet. I didn't much. I didn't do much either.
Yeah.
It's too hot outside.
Yeah. Other than chase the ladies around the conflict?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it.
Same stuff every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how's Bob doing?
Bob is doing okay. I was busy working on the homework assignment most of the weekend.
Okay.
And coming along.
Good. Good. Yeah, some people have started sending in some drawings and things like that. So yeah, we'll have some interesting stuff to look at tomorrow. It'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So, have you been working on that assignment, Armando?
I'll be honest to you, no, I'm gonna work tonight.
You're one of these wait
I've been
until the
late.
11th hour and start doing something.
I am tempted to call one of my neighbors and ask her to lay on my couch and draw her.
You could.
It's kind of more fun.
Well, it might be a lot of fun. Might get you into all kind of trouble, but at this point in life, hey, getting into trouble is probably not a bad thing. So, anyway, like I say,
Most of the time, it's very easy to get in trouble.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
Doesn't take a whole lot of effort.
yeah. I used to tell people at Benson all the time. It's like, hey, act up now. We're running out of time. If you're gonna do it, do it now.
Many people think that because we are old, we have money. I don't know where they get that.
I don't know. That's not a prevailing thought with anybody that I know.
No, I haven't had that problem either.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah. Usually it's like if you're older, then you're usually out of money, and or
I agree with Armando. Some of them do think you have a lot of money.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Well, they can think whatever they want. They're like, no, not really. So happy.
Hey, John, I like what you have behind you, John. You did a good job.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah,
I couldn't do it that way.
That was my girl dancing on the street.
Yeah, John's hanging out in San Miguel these days. He's leading a much more.
You got it. That's it.
That's the way.
Little nicer weather.
Oh yeah. Speaking of which, boy, is everybody happy to be in Atlanta rather than in like New Orleans or anywhere out there?
Well,
it's gonna be. We're gonna get hit with something though tomorrow.
Why tomorrow? Because I mean, by tomorrow it's past. It's way north of here.
But we're supposed to be getting the outer bands circling around tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get a little bit of rain, you know, but not much.
I heard 1 to 4 inches on one news show.
John.
And tornadoes.
Well, I don't know about the tornadoes. I haven't heard anything about that.
Yeah.
But 1 to 4 inches would not be a big deal. They got 18 inches of rain.
I know.
18.
Horrible, terrible.
And the thing is, you're looking within about a 4-hour period. They got 18 inches of rain. That's incredible. You know.
Yep.
You haven't seen raining, no one of you. Rain.
No. In New Orleans too, that's terrible. The whole power grid is out. It might be weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, they were literally showing like rooftops of like, and the problem was, you know, it's not like a lot of houses were coming apart. It's these commercial metal buildings. And it's like the metal roofs were just lifting like right off the top of them and kind of tumbling down, you know, taking out power lines and everything. It's crazy.
Right. No, it's terrible.
Crazy. Anyway. Yeah, I feel for those folks.
I almost moved to Metairie a few years back.
Yeah. Well, I was watching.
While I was working, I had to offer him a job transfer, which fortunately I refused.
Yeah, I was watching that storm because, you know, and I'm not happy it ended up anywhere, but when they first started tracking it, they kind of were thinking that maybe it might end up, you know, more toward Mobile. And that would have put us right directly in the path of it. You know, it ended up going further west. So,
How about your property in Alabama? Is that?
It cleared that. It swung way around the side of that. So, yeah, I was watching that too. And anyway, so here we are in Atlanta, and we're not getting, you know, buried in rain and everything else, which is good. Anyway, let's get rocking and rolling. We haven't heard from any of the ladies this morning. How's everybody doing?
I beg your pardon.
Yes, we did hear from Eloise.
I never promised you a rose garden.
And good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Yeah. Did I have I misspoken there, Eloise?
Yes, you did. I mentioned I agreed with the Iman about the fact that some people think older people are rich.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. All right. You know, I have short-timers. Said it 5 minutes ago. I can't remember. Wow. That's terrible. All right. I stand corrected. Anyway, good morning. Happy Monday, everybody. And it's good to see you all here. And boy, have we got
Veronica, we're looking at your ceiling, Veronica.
Okay, here I am.
There you go.
Yes.
Hey, Veronica.
There you go.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Happy Monday. All right.
Happy Monday.
Anyway, we got some stuff to look at. And some really, really interesting artists. You know, I will say, okay, and this is for the ladies, right up front. I was remiss in the fact that I didn't collect any artwork by any women artists. Now, that doesn't mean I wasn't looking for them. It's just that the stuff that I found, in particular by 2 different men, had some really interesting stuff that I think we'll all talk about and find really interesting. But before we jump into that, I have a video by a guy. His name is Scott Waddell. He's an American artist. I've talked to him a couple of times actually on Facebook, things like that. Because somehow I think we're related. And that's kind of a long story, but I'll get in. Well, I probably won't even get into that. But he's a painter and very good representational painter. I think Scott might be in his early 40s now. Okay, I can't tell you exactly how old he is, but he's very, very accomplished, and he's got some interesting things to share about how to make your paintings look more three-dimensional. Okay, anybody got any ideas on how you might do that before we get into the video?
Nope.
Oh, come on.
Muting.
We've
Oh,
talked.
you can mute. You can make it smaller. You can make it. You
Oh,
make
Miss
mute the
Bernice
colors
is-
back.
Miss Bernice is screaming.
I'm screaming.
But you sound that you show that draw that you did that you were screaming.
Oh.
That.
Yes.
No, I was saying you can make something in the background smaller, or you can mute the color so that it fades into the distance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would say you could soften the edges or work with your values a little.
Yeah. So well, and a lot of what you guys are talking about is about creating the illusion of a depth of field, right? Distance.
Right.
Okay. Now, the question is, let's say that you're painting something like an orange, okay, or an apple. Question is, how do you make that feel like it's round? 3D sitting in. Not so much about depth, about making something look far away and something look close to you, but about actually taking an object and making it feel round.
The highlights and tone and form.
Right.
Right. Yeah, creating form. I got any ideas on that? Come on, I know it's Monday.
Isn't it light and dark? Like
Value.
the light?
Value.
Yeah. You're on the right track. Yeah. Lighter and darker values, right?
Yeah.
And how many have you got to have to turn form?
5 maybe?
Five.
At
Five.
least.
At least 5. That's good. See, you guys are wide awake. It's Monday. Yay. Okay. So I think this is about a little less than 20 minutes. Okay. But, take a listen to what he has to say. And, see if you agree, disagree, have other thoughts. Okay. And we'll talk about it. And I can't guarantee that it won't get interrupted with lots of commercials, stuff like that. It is YouTube after all. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So let me make him full screen. All right. Away we go.
That looked really flat and two-dimensional. Horses didn't whinny at them. No birds flew into my canvas thinking it was a real space. I'm struggling and pushing, painting, and eventually things started to look more 3D and real. And today I've put together some of the ideas that I've used to help make my paintings look more 3D. The main thing I try to think about when I pick up a brush, the first goal I have in mind is to make whatever I'm painting look 3D. sitting in real three-dimensional space. That's my main focus and my main goal, and all other things that follow, value, color, proportion, anatomy, all fit into that main goal, that driving force of making it look real and three-dimensional. Now, the trick to making things look real and 3D when you paint begins up here. It's what you think about that will make the real difference. The first problem you're going to run into is that your canvas or your painting surface is flat. It's a two-dimensional plane. So every time your brush touches that surface, you are physically reminded of the fact painting on a 2D flat surface. And the thing you need to do is to transcend that two-dimensional surface. You need to convince yourself that you're passing into real three-dimensional space and going in through that Z-axis and inhabiting a real three-dimensional world. Now, it's willful delusion, I know, and it sounds crazy, but that's the whole trick. Everything I do, everything I paint is better when I myself believe that I'm in real 3D space. So I often use a little bit of a device to get me engaged with that three-dimensional illusion. I might come in and I imagine that picture plane, which is basically that flat plane that you're looking through into your scene. It's also the flat plane of your canvas. And I go in and I think, okay, my canvas is like this, my picture plane is.
Okay.
And almost as if I'm going through the Stargate portal, I can go through my canvas and suddenly imagine that world in front of me. And I'll often look at my canvas and imagine if I could reach in there and touch various planes in space. And I'll look at my subject and I think, hey, this model stand is here, or hey, this wall's back here, or the side of their face is over here. And then I go to my canvas, I imagine transcending and passing through that picture plane into that space and touching that same model stand, touching that same wall or side of their face. I try to make myself engage with the space in a very imaginative, fun, creative way, as if it was a real three-dimensional space. And then from there, I try to convince myself that everything I do is sculptural, that if I change a value here, if I make a cheek darker, if I make a forehead lighter, I'm actually changing the three-dimensional form. And that forehead is getting lighter because I'm turning it in three-dimensional space more towards the light. Or that cheek is getting darker because I'm actually turning it in real three-dimensional space away from the light source. So you gotta rewire your brain. You have to change the way you think so that you respond to values and colors and everything that's happening as if you're in a real three-dimensional space. A lot of patience, it takes a lot of focus, and it also takes a lot of creativity, which, look, we're artists. That's great. You don't want to just be copying whatever you see in some visual, optical way. There's no fun in that. You want to be inventing. You want to be constructing, thinking about that 3D space. Something else you can do is, as you paint, imagine what that surface.
Right. I'm going to stop this for a second. I'm having some issues here.
Yeah, because you didn't pay then.
What?
You pay then. I mean, Yahoo or whatever.
You pay Yahoo?
They want you to pay.
I paid Yahoo. Okay. All right. I switched it over. Let's try it now.
What is the artist's name again, please?
His name is Scott Waddell. Waddell.
Thank you.
Okay.
Feel like to the touch, and try to imagine that as your brush touches down on the canvas. So if you're painting a form that's round like this on a cheek, it would feel like in that exact area to the touch, and then try to generate in your own mind at that moment in time that feeling as you paint that form. That will take what would otherwise be a flat experience of the brush touching a canvas and turn it into a real three-dimensional tactile experience. And all of that feeds into a more three-dimensional outcome every time you paint a gradation and make color choices and value choices. Now, there are various exercises that you could do that would enhance your. The first exercise I recommend doing is painting cubes from your imagination. On the palette, I have titanium white and I have a 50-50 mixture of raw umber and ivory black. The reason I mix together my ivory black and raw umber is that the ivory black makes my value darker so I can get deeper with my form and shadows, and the raw umber is a little bit warmer than the ivory black so I can get a little bit more of a warmer gray than if I just use the ivory black alone. I mix those two together with the palette knife and put it here next to the white. And you want to paint imagination. If you're looking at something, that sort of defeats the purpose. The idea here is that you imagine that you're in your own three-dimensional space. If you're looking at a cube that you set up as a still life or find a reference picture of a cube, then you're not really conjuring up the same imaginative space that you will be if you're working from your imagination. Now, unless you're Picasso, you're only going to see three sides of your cube from any given angle. So let's go ahead and work with three basic values. I'm going to pre-mix those now. Value, and I'm not going to make it as bright as white out of the tube. I'll make it like this, which is the white with a little bit of this darker mixture into it. The next side of the cube will be a little bit darker. Let's say it's a little less light facing, and then the next side will be in shadow, but I don't want it to be super dark because I want to have room for a cast shadow, which might be darker. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab some of this first color here, and this first value here, and I'm going to make up a plane. It can be anywhere. A plane in space. Now, to paint this plane, I have to transcend or pass through my picture plane here. I have to fully imagine this as a real three-dimensional space. And indeed, I was, as I painted this, that's how I was able to paint a plane in space. As I came in, I imagined my picture plane or the flatness of the canvas, and then I imagined tilting like this in space to be able to touch that side of the plane. That is what I'm portrait. If you see me and you see my brush rotate a little bit as I'm painting a portrait, I'm landing down on a plane that faces here. I'm landing down on a plane that faces here. I'm landing down on a plane that faces here. And it's that sort of movement through space that guides my brushwork, makes my brushwork take on different angles, and my mark making have a three-dimensional quality. Now that we have this first plane, and again, your plane could be anywhere. This is where I chose to put mine. I now have to make the next plane attached to it. So top plane, and let's say that it goes back like this. And for me to paint this, I have to first imagine the exact rotation and tilt to that first one, and then this one laying down. I feel like I'm going in space and touching the top of that plane. Now, let's go to our last plane here, which is the darker one. Now, the main goal here is to make this look 3D. Maybe your perspective's a little wonky. Look, my exact. But I will tell you this. I was in that three-dimensional space. I did believe in this when I painted it. I didn't see this flat canvas here. I saw this cube sitting in space, and that created three sides to our cube here that presents us with a light effect. Now let's start with an idea of the light source. Let's have the light come more from above now. So imagine our lightest value first. Come in, paint the top plane of this cube. Now let's paint this a little bit darker. We want that light coming in from above, but still striking this front plane. And now let's paint this shadow side. But again, we're not going to make it as dark as we possibly can go because we want to save that for the cast shadow. The light's got to be coming in from our left a little bit because sides in shadow. So let's say it's hitting this corner right here, coming in and hitting this corner right here, and hitting that back corner back where we can't see it. We have some 3D looking cubes for better or for worse, and this is essentially what I think about every form I paint on the portrait. But the difference, of course, is that the portrait has rounded forms. We don't actually have these severe planes. Nothing on the face is really like a cube. So for our next is paint a sphere. I'm going to have our light come in from the upper right, or my upper right here. And I'm going to grab some of my lightest value right here. I'm going to place that right here on top. Make it a little bit darker. And here we go. Now, here's the thing. Just like when we were painting planes, and you wanted to imagine that plane tilting back in space, you want to imagine yourself passing through that picture plane and actually touching the side of your plane, however it's oriented. So landing on top of it, feel it as if it's a real material and giving you feedback. What does that surface feel like to the touch? Do that with your sphere. Now, from your imagination, imagine where the shadow would be if the light were coming in at whatever orientation or point that you decided. So off of my light orientation like this, half of this sphere is going to be in the light and half is going to be in the shadow. And if the light's coming in at this angle, then that halfway point is going to be right around here, which means this going to be in shadow. So now I'm going to pick my shadow value and then imagine this shadow side. Now, because the light is coming from above and it's a little towards us, we're going to have a little bit of a curve to this shadow edge. Doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to practice imagining this as a real ball in space, which is why doing it from your imagination is so important. Then, to keep things really simple for now, let's just fill in that shadow. Now, this is paint a portrait, and I put in that shadow under the ball of the nose, or that shadow under a chin or under a cheek. Anywhere that there might be a form shadow like this, I work off that light source. I imagine where that shadow is. Of course, I'm looking at my model and I'm seeing where it is, but the thing that I'm doing that's so important to make it look more 3D is I'm imagining where it would be in space in relationship to that light source, and I'm putting myself into that space so that in the same way that I'm painting the underside of this sphere right now, I'm painting the underside of that cheek, that chin. It's all about feeling that as you paint. I imagine this round. I feel the sphere pushing out on my brush. I feel myself wrapping. Look how I changed my angle of my brush stroke there to go around that in space. That's what you're practicing. Sure, you want it to look good. You want it to look refined. That comes with time. What you can practice right now is pretending that you're going around this sphere in space and working. Have to go together. If you're not working off the light source, then you're not building up a light effect that will look 3D. If you're not landing on the surface, then you're filling in values flatly on the flat canvas. It's those two things working in tandem, the light source and the curvature of the form, and believing in it yourself. That's what gets you good form. That's what makes your painting look 3D. There's all these other components to this where you have to organize it so it looks like it's even, so that this looks like it's turning the same as this. So that takes a lot of patience and organization, time, and experience handling paint. You can go for that sensibility of 3D illusion right now. Day one of painting. We're going to keep going. Turn, turn, turn up to that shadow edge. Feel that form. Feel it curve in real 3D space. Anytime you're reminded of the canvas, say no. This is real. All right, now let's imagine our light source again, our sphere, and work off of that to cast a believable shadow on the surface below to make this look even more 3D. So we know our light's coming in here, striking here most directly, but it's coming in here and terminating on the surface of the sphere right there, and at all points along that shadow. So we can geometrically connect to a cast shadow on the surface below by looking at the shadow edge. It terminates right there and would strike this surface here. It comes here and terminates and strikes that surface there. Now we imagine all those points around to help us visualize a 3D shape of our cast shadow. Is what I'm doing perfect here? Of course not. It's my best attempt here. There is a relationship, a geometric angle between that point and that point, that point and that point, and I'm imagining where it's coming. Even if yours looks like a disaster, that is fine. I've painted many of these that are far, far, far worse than this, so don't worry. You are just practicing and you're getting better at imagining this space and reminding yourself of what form creation feels like for when you model your next portrait. Okay, so this is the basic framework, but there's a few things we can do to make it look even more 3D. Now, these are fun little things. They're conceptually related to the light source and the environment. Our little tricks that you can do to enhance your form. One, on the sphere, right where that shadow edge is, it's facing more out to the environment and not facing this surface that the sphere is sitting on as directly as the lower part of the sphere. So that means that terminator shadow edge could be darker if this outside environment is darker and there's less reflected light facing that part of the shadow. So let's go ahead and make this darker. Now, this isn't always true, but it's a common convention, especially in things. So you make this terminator a little darker because it's receiving less reflected light than parts of the shadow. Now, as that sphere goes around, it starts to face some of the reflected light of this surface below, but as it really tucks into that cast shadow, it starts to lose some of that reflected light, and you enter into an area known as ambient occlusion, where the ambient light or reflected light, whatever the case might be, is occluded by the other form it's touching. So in this case, the plane of the surface it's sitting on. So as that tucks in there, the light is being occluded and it gets darker. So you can make things look more 3D if you respond to that ambient occlusion and make it a little bit darker as you go down here. Now, the same can be true for the cast shadow itself, which is already very dark, but there is environmental lighting or ambient lighting in this scene. There's got to be at least a little bit, and that varies, of course, but let's imagine there's a certain ambient light. So this shadow, you can see some light in there. So it's not as dark as it would be right where the sphere makes contact and blocks the shadow from any ambient light that would be filtering or entering into it. So you get a little darker right there. And some people call that the core shadow, which seems like a little bit of an arbitrary label. I like to think about it more conceptually. And conceptually, that means you have to use the fancy expression ambient occlusion, because the ambient light is being occluded by. Oh, it makes you sound very pretentious, but that's what the art world's all about, getting as pretentious as humanly possible so you can impress other hominids. Now, let's do a couple other effects that will make it look more 3D. Let's imagine our light source has a certain size to it, so that outside this cast shadow, there's this murky area where some of the light is being blocked by the sphere, but not all of it. This is the partial cast shadow, or penumbra. Now, the further the cast shadow gets from the casting form, the bigger that penumbra gets. As the cast shadow gets to the casting form, the less of a penumbra there is, or the sharper that cast shadow is. So you can make something look more three-dimensional by adding a little bit of a penumbra or softness to the outside of the cast shadow as it moves away from the casting form. So as we get out here, I'm going to imagine a band of outside value to that cast shadow, and it gets widest and softest out here, the furthest point from that sphere. I have to really imagine myself laying down in this three-dimensional space as I do this, so that I can really commit to that shadow being on and that penumbra being on that surface that the sphere is sitting on. Now, this is what I do all the time. You have a cast shadow from a nose or any other form, and as that cast shadow goes out and the nose gets further from it, that edge gets softer. Okay, the last thing isn't really about making it look 3D, but it's fun. It's the highlight, everybody's favorite attribute of light, the specular reflection. So let's go ahead and conceptualize it. This is a video in of itself, but all this is going to do is make your sphere from imagination look more glossy. But hey, forms that we paint very a certain amount of gloss to them, so practicing the highlight from your imagination is good. Now, here's the thing. The highlight occurs at the angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. So the light comes in and strikes the sphere most directly. Our line of sight comes in and strikes the sphere right in the middle. So the point halfway between the two, where that light would bounce off, angle of incidence equals angle of reflection, would be right here. You imagine a line between those 2 points, the highlight would happen. Now, there is foreshortening involved in this effect, but that's, again, a big topic for another time. I just thought I'd include it here at the end to make your three-dimensional sphere have a little bit of shine to it. I dither out that edge here, which all depends on the kind of material it is, but we get a little bit of a highlight or specular reflection on the surface. And there we go. We have a three-dimensional sphere. And again, the important do this from your imagination. You think about that light source. You put yourself in 3D space so you can feel it. Feel like you're sculpting. And then take these sensibilities, take this idea, and use it when you paint your next painting from observation. If it's a portrait, still life, landscape, you can take these ideas and enter into that three-dimensional space. Think about the light source and make something that's more believable and more 3D. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found these form exercises useful. Make your paintings that much more three-dimensional. If you like my content, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and check me out at patreon.com/ScottWaddell. I'll see you in the next video.
Okay, there we go. Any thoughts about what he was doing?
That was very valuable to me. I got a lot out of that, but I wanted to ask you, redoing that drawing from Friday, and it has a shadow on the beach. So the shadow, if you're putting a shadow on a soft surface, is it just a blur, or is it good to just more detail like he did it on that sphere?
Well, think of it this way, okay? Where the shadow is closest to the object, which is down where her feet are making contact, and I'm assuming she's on a beach that's got sand on it, right? It's not a hard surface.
Right.
Okay. So that being the case, you know, the shadow, the cast shadow, is going to have, say, the clearest or sharpest edge, you know, at the areas closer to her feet. And then as it moves away from there, it's going to begin to get softer. See? Because, again, you know, let's say the cast shadow of her head, right, which is maybe further away from her body, more ambient light is going to filter into that, right? So it's going to not be as dark, and it's going to be a softer edge the further it gets away from her point of contact with that surface. Yeah.
But on the sand, should it be that distinct?
Well, that's one thing. As it gets further away, you know, because you had a fairly long cast shadow there, it's going to get softer and far less distinct. As it's toward her legs, you know, her feet and stuff like that, it's going to be a little bit sharper. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be a real hard edge. It just means it's going to be clearer and sharper there, and it's going to get fuzzier as it kind of moves away.
Thank you.
And that's kind of the nature of cast shadows, you know. The closer it is to the object, you know, the point of contact, you know, the sharper you're going to feel it or see it. If you had, let's say you had a cup of coffee sitting on a table, you know, the points where the coffee cup, you know, to the corners are making contact, you're going to see those lines a little bit sharper. As it gets out, you know, to the end of it, it's going to get a little fuzzier. You know. Try it with an edge, try it with anything, you know, and just look at that shadow and the cast shadow and see what that does. And it's an interesting effect. And it's something that, you know, a lot of people don't take a lot of time looking at, but you should, because again, you know, it's all about what the light is doing. And because the light's being blocked off, creating that cast shadow, it's not necessarily equal, right? It's not going to be this hard, sharp edge everywhere all the way around. As again, as you get further away from the object, the more diffuse that edge is going to get. You know? And, you know, the strength of the light, the surface that it's being cast on, whether it's a hard surface or a soft surface, whether the surface is flat or whether the surface is sort of uneven and undulating like sand might be, is going to have a lot of effect on, you know, what that really looks like. So you got to kind of take that into consideration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A lot of things to think about. Did that kind of answer your question?
Yes, it did.
You don't look happy about it.
They charge. I found him, Scott Waddell, he charged.
I'm sorry, what?
I found that guy that you just showed, Scott Waddell, but he charged.
Yeah.
So it's not that I can look at his tool or whatever you call it free, you know, I have to pay.
Speak up, Armando. What about it?
I say I found that guy, Scott Waddell, but
right.
when I go on all of those videos that he has, that he charged. It's not free to watch what how.
Oh, right, yeah. If you go and you subscribe, you know, and do some of his classes, I mean, I think he's got videos out there that, I think they run around $200 plus.
Oh, okay. So I'll pass.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know.
I don't have that money, so that's the truth. So.
Yeah, I know.
But you're old and rich, Armando.
I know. That's what some of my neighbors think, that I have money. And I charge the
Armando,
same.
are you assuming that I think that you're rich and that you can, you know, afford Scott Waddell's videos? You know, that's why I'm showing them to you for free, man.
Well, thank you.
What can I do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, all right. So, anybody got any thoughts about what you saw, what he said?
Well, he's very clear. Yeah, I like the way how he explained, and he talked slow, and yes, it was nice to see. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was interesting that on his paintings that he was doing demonstrations with, he had an outline of the image that he was painting, but he was going right for the kill in terms of values of the face to get it. I mean, it didn't, like, you know, we have one school that says you make a nice underpainting and then you work it out from there and get your lights and darks from that, or he was going right for the kill on it. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And he was using a tiny brush, a small brush too, which means it takes a long time to complete something.
Well, he was using a tiny brush on an area that he was turning form on. Okay. And he and Cesar Santos, that's another name that you may want to become familiar with. They both kind of subscribe to that method. And you'd have to look at more of his work and his videos and stuff. Their basic premise is when they start a painting, you know, they'll come up and they'll do all these preliminary sketches and things like that. They may do a complete underpainting or, you know, a value study. But unlike a traditional Renaissance painter, they don't take that underpainting and paint over it. They just use that as a separate study for value. And then they'll start the painting over again. And as Bob had pointed out, you know, well, in Scott's case, he'll actually kind of roughly paint out the shapes, you know, and get his composition set up. And then he'll go back in and start working at his focal point. See? And this is kind of the key difference between he and, say, like Richard Smith or Richard Schmid and a lot of other artists, is that Santos and Waddell both kind of subscribe to the idea that you go right to the focal point and you start working from there. And what they do is they get that focal point set, and as sharp and as realistic, you know, as anything in that painting. And then as they work outward, they begin to abstract and loosen up the paint. Again, so they end up with a similar effect to like Sargent, where Sargent would focus your eye maybe on just sort of a triangular shape of the features on the face, because he was painting portraits mainly. And then everything else would be looser. They come up with a similar effect. Okay, they just go about it in a different way. Okay, and so, and you know, and I've said this many times. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. You do it the way that works for you, that makes the most sense for you. Okay, just because I take the approach of, you know, when I start a painting, I want to begin to see the big abstract underlying composition, you know, the shapes, the colors, things like that. And so I'll block in everything. My goal is to get that canvas covered as quickly as possible with, you know, relatively related colors and values And then from there, I can make a choice, you know, begin to go back in and rework and tighten certain areas, you know, and develop the painting from there. But I need those big blocks so that as I work in that final area, I'm relatively assured that the color and the value that I'm using, you know, is harmonizing and relates to all the rest of the painting. You know, now Santos and Scott Waddell, they don't do it that way. You know, are they successful painters? Yes. You know, do they do great work? Absolutely. You know, they just have a different process, and what works for them. You know, I've tried it. You know, I've tried working that way. It drives me crazy, personally. You know, it's not my thing. Okay. But that doesn't mean that it might not work for you, you know. And if you want to try it that way, then by all means, you know, I think you should experiment with it. Okay. But yeah, they have a little bit different approach. And you know, if you begin to look around out there in the world, say different ateliers, you know, places like the Art Students League, things like that. It's like everywhere you go, you know, they have, you know, a totally different approach, you know, from, you know, other institutions and other artists. And like I said, there's lots and lots of ways of getting there, you know, and, you know, you may pick up ideas and concepts from me and from, you know, other artists that you work with and other schools and videos and things that you watch, and that's okay. You know, because what's going to determine your final product as an artist is really all of those influences. You know, everything that you've looked at, everything that you've, you know, studied and worked with, you know, they're all going to have an effect on you. So, and they're going to make your art your art. You know? Because the more you expose yourself to, the more choices you can make. So that's kind of the goal here, is let's look at, you know, as many people as we can, and, you know, you can pick and choose the things that you like, and then try to bring that into your own work. That being said, we have two very interesting artists to look at. Okay. And the first artist that I'm going to start with, you might want to write his name down, is Jack Moorfield.
Jack?
Yeah, Jack, J-A.
Yeah, I know how Jack, yes. Hold on.
Moorfield, M-O-R-E-F-I-E-L-D. Okay.
M-O-R-E.
R-E. And then Field, F.
Okay, Field.
I-E-L-D. Moorfield. Okay. Now, I will tell you, I mean, you know, it's, you know, you can find his work online. It's not always easy to find, but, you know, if you keep looking, you know, you'll come across it. I generally do a search on images, and, you know, I kind of know what his work looked like and what I was looking for. And so, you know, I was able to pick out pieces that related to him. Anyway, I'm going to share some of his work, and I think you'll find it interesting. I'd be interested in hearing what your thoughts are on it.
Jack Moorfield, artist.
Yes. So here's his first image. Let me put it up.
Yeah. Now, how you call that style? Because all his painting is kind of that way.
Yeah.
How you call that style?
I don't know.
Unique.
With those, you know what I'm saying? Oh, you see all his painting. I saw now just briefly, they had that thing, something on.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Wonder does that. she paints a background, you know, with patterns, and then she'll paint the picture on top of the pattern, and somehow it blends together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some wonders painting look like that.
He has pattern in more of his brain. So
I didn't think anybody noticed. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I noticed.
Okay. So as you can see, you know, I mean, he's doing some interesting things. You know, everything is kind of outlined, right? And he's got all these designs and patterns and shapes going on.
Little Van Gogh-ish.
Yeah, kind of through the image. But at the same time, you know, it's not enough to really interfere with, you know, your perception that this is a three-dimensional face and form, right?
Right.
Okay. And just, if you will, kind of notice how that occurs and happens, you know, through all of his work. Now,
that's a lot of work to do those things by hand.
It is, yes. You know, my guess is he does not sit down and do one of these in a day. You know?
Alla Prima is not his thing, huh?
No, I would say not. No. And these tend to be kind of like, you know, 24, 36, 30, 40, you know. They're not small paintings. You know, they're fairly good size. And they're acrylic, if you want to know the medium. Let me just kind of blow one of these up here. And as you can see, you know, even the, you know, even that kind of, let's call it a ribbon, okay? You know, each of these individual ribbons, you know, they're really not like one solid color, are they? They kind of vary a little bit on some of these, where they're, you know, dark.
Red and purple and
yeah, not only the color,
yellow
but
and blue.
yeah, but notice that they change, you know, as they change direction a little bit. So yeah, he's not just laying down a flat color in most cases. You know, they're getting darker or lighter, more intense or more muted, so that that ribbon structure, you know, seems to kind of move in space. See, you know, if they were all flat, you know, it may not feel quite as three-dimensional. See, but how he's moving through, and it gets, you know, from kind of a, say, a light value into kind of a mid-tone, into a bright, and then into a shadow, and then into a kind of a mid-tone again. So, you know, this is not like a, you know, I'm just going to kind of put it down once and walk away from it. You know, he puts these shapes down, and then it actually looks like after he gets the paint stroke down, he goes back in and he outlines it. I think that's probably done afterward rather than putting down the outline first and then filling it in. I think it's just the opposite. He puts the color down, and then after he gets the color down, then he outlines it. So, be interesting to see what his working process is. But, you know, it creates some really interesting images. And he does mainly a lot of, you know, recognizable people, entertainers, musicians, stuff like that. Yeah. This is a bit, you know, kind of jarring and disturbing.
Yes.
You know.
foreshortened head is interesting on that one.
Uh-huh, yeah. You know, but he's very successful at, you know, creating the illusion that there's a guy standing there playing the guitar. You know, you see the fingers, you see the guitar, and yet it's all broken up into these smaller units, these ribbons or whatever you want to call them, worms, if you want to call it that. You know, and you know, and it's the color and the value, kind of how they kind of work together. To kind of give you this illusion, you know, this three-dimensional illusion. Everybody knows who this is, right?
No.
David Bowie.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. Okay. Now I see.
Yeah. Ever hear of David Bowie?
Yeah, in the 80s.
The 80s? Okay.
Yeah.
How about this?
Yeah, I recognize.
Yeah.
That is Salvador Dali.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, I was impressed by this piece. Actually, this is the first piece of his that I saw. And I was rather kind of taken back by it because it feels like Dolly, you know?
Yes, yeah.
It does. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, Dolly would approve of that. You know, I think he would like that painting of himself.
I thought it's interesting how he softened the background against the image face and the background. I thought clever upper right hand.
Yeah.
Side
it just kind of diffuses into the back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sets a whole new problem, you know, with creating edges and stuff like that. It's like, you know, how do you create that border of where things start and where they stop, and how do you create these kind of blurred, softened edges and sharp edges? But he's kind of worked it out, you know. He seems to have that solved for the most part. So here he is, you know, out there, you know, working. Now, one of the reasons that I said that I think that he does the outlining last is if you look at this painting, you don't see any outline right now, do you?
No. Yep.
And in fact, it looks like he's sort of painted all the flesh tones in sort of a conventional way, and then, you know, he starts, you know, breaking up his edges and painting his background with all those color shapes and things. So, you know, my guess is that this is a very slow, meticulous process. Okay.
I would think that he'd have to make sure the background, well, the painting of the object or was well dry when he started painting. After he painted the face, imagine he would wait for a day or so before he started putting all of the little ribbons all over the face.
Yeah.
So if he makes any errors, then he can correct it without destroying the paint, the picture beneath it.
Yeah. Well, now this is all acrylic paint, so it dries rather rapidly. You know, he'll put one of those ribbons down, and 10, 15 minutes later, it's dry. It's not going to go anywhere. But still, yeah, my guess is that this is a very long process. You know, it's not a quick thing. So if you're not one of those people who are particularly really, really focused and patient, this is probably not the technique for you. Okay. Now, I also saw this piece, and I really, really liked it. And I wasn't sure that it was his at first, but it is. And evidently, at one point he started off kind of doing, you know, more or less these pointillistic paintings. And we've seen artists like Seurat, you know, paint like this, you know, from the post-impressionist era. And, you know, this is very much so a pointillist technique. Look at the color and value. Now, the interesting thing is, you know, he keeps all the color outside the figure, and then basically, you know, all the flesh tones, you know, he's not really changing color and temperature so much as it's just value, you know, on a base flesh tone. Pardon me. Which, I don't know, you know, I would probably want to get a little more color in those shadows and those transitions than he does. But, you know, they're his paintings, so he can do what he wants. I thought this was kind of interesting, you know, changing the subject from a figure or a face to a landscape, using that same technique and trying to get the effect of sunlight breaking through, you know, the leaves and the trees, stuff like that.
I don't know that that works as well as in the landscape, in this one anyway, as it does on the images.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to work as well close up. Now, when you pull back from it, you know, from, let's say that we were across the room from it, you know, it begins to kind of pull together and read, you know, pretty well. I still like the figures and the faces, the portraits better.
Yeah, I do too.
But now this one is very dark and disturbing. I mean, it really is. It's like, wow. I don't know that I could live with that image in my house.
Kind of a Jimmy Durante kind of a nose there.
Yeah, it's really distorted, you know. But it's you know, the dark value, but also has kind of a menacing feel to it.
It does.
I suppose that's what he intended. Now, this one doesn't seem to be outlined the same way that a lot of his other pieces were, but they're still broken up into these little color ribbons. I'm sorry. I guess I didn't get enough of a nap last night. Yeah. Okay. That was kind of fun, you know, doing this band on the back of the guitar. So.
And then keepsake for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, he does a lot of musicians and things like that. You know, here he is. Evidently, he likes to get out in front of the gallery and paint. And I think this is the landscape that we,
yeah,
or maybe it's another rendition of it. But it's, you know, it's interesting to see what he's doing. Yeah, we'd seen this painting earlier. So, if you're a Grateful Dead fan, a younger John Lennon, you know, Kurt Cobain, and Miles Davis. There's another one of those more or less pointillistic, you know, type paintings with Paul McCartney. It's a nice piece, you know.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
it's got a softness to it that I like quite a bit. Tends to like to do Jimi Hendrix a lot. He's got a couple of different ones that are really interesting. This one is okay. I like the one coming up better.
Looks kind of like Wolfman.
Wolfman?
That's not that guitar player who was famous and
Yep.
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix. Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix. Yeah.
I like this piece of him back. I think it kind of, to me, it kind of feels more like Hendrix. So, but you've got a very active, very busy surface there, and yet, you step away from it, and it all pulls together into, a pretty cohesive image. Your everyday commute.
I'm trying to remember what artist this reminds me of. Gosh, can't think of.
Yeah, it in a way it's like taking the paint surface and it's like treating it like a collage, like little bits of glass or mosaic or paper or whatever, because it's broken up into all these smaller kind of units. Another David Bowie piece. And then another landscape.
That one works a little better.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, it's to hold together as a landscape a little bit better.
I would like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this kind of reminds me, I guess, kind of out of that album, Yellow Submarine by the Beatles, and that whole psychedelic movement. It's, in a way, it's kind of like the work has that kind of psychedelic feel, to it. Maybe not the bright, like really bright, intense colors, but it's very active. It's very busy. It's like a lot of stuff going on back there in the background. So anybody got any thoughts about any of that? Likes, dislikes?
Yes, some of them are all right. Yeah.
Pardon?
Some of them are all right. This particular one, I don't care. It doesn't tell me anything.
The landscape doesn't do it for you?
No.
I love them because they are a conversation piece. You only need one or two pieces in your home because they're so empowering individually. So they are definitely something that would be good to sell for, especially this young new generation who likes things that are unique and individualized. And you would be able to get their attention. They want to have something that's different from their neighbors and their friends, and to have just even have one of those in your house for conversation. And that's what I think this would be good for, only appreciation and seeing how people feel about different types of art, because we sometimes get very narrow-minded as to what we think art really is. But I think that young people would appreciate it a little bit more than some of us who've been in the traditional field for a long time or see art as traditional. So I like some of the pieces very much so, and probably would at some point would happen with my friend or someone I knew had painted that. I probably would buy one from them just to have it as a conversation piece and to add to a more to kind of have a more diverse collection of paintings.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they certainly, I think that the paintings that are a little more graphic and kind of outline ribbon type shapes, those are definitely late 20th, early 21st century paintings. They don't remind you of anything previous to that. Some of the pointillist paintings, again, kind of remind me a little bit of like Seurat and some of the post-impressionists, but yeah, it's a different approach. It's a different way of expressing, contemporary images of people. He did the one piece of the people on the subway, and I know that celebrities like musicians and things like that are easily recognizable images, but I think more of his kind of day-to-day slice of life.
I walked away from him. I missed what you just said.
Okay.
Celebrity like us.
Yeah. Well, we're just talking, about this particular guy's work, and the fact. Well, my thought is if I were going to do paintings rather than just focusing on celebrities, I would do more contemporary scenes. More things that, common things that people would see. People in the street scenes, things like that are more reflective of the time.
Yeah.
And I guess celebrities are, in a sense, but,
Well, he makes money and more money doing those, obviously.
Yeah, I think probably more people are open to the idea of having a Jimi Hendrix painting hanging on their wall as a personal statement, rather than some, a group of people on a subway. But yeah, to me, I kind of like the other paintings better, rather than the celebrity thing. But each their own. Anybody else?
Yeah, his paintings reminded me of Van Gogh's painting, The Starry Night.
Yeah.
And I particularly like the subway painting and his use of color and design, because I noticed that on the first figure that he painted, the design on the jacket, the whole jacket was covered with that one color combination and design. But then on the second lady, her jacket was different, but the trim he used the same as the first one's jacket. Mm-hmm. And I was interested in the way that he did his combinations, and he was able to make that all flow together.
Okay. Yeah, that's something I hadn't observed, but okay. Yeah, that's interesting. This is Maryland, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good to see you here.
Thank you.
And yeah, thanks for that. Anybody else?
I love his work. It reminds me of Henson's work. It's beautiful colors. The way he's working with the colors. I just love color. It turned me on.
All right. Yay. Okay. Yeah, he's got some really, really wonderful stuff. Okay. So I'm going to show you another artist, and I've got a lot of work by him. And in fact, we've looked at his work before, a long time ago. But he's produced some more recent things, and I kind of like the direction that he's heading in, and how his work is kind of evolving and changing. Now he's an Irish artist. His name is Ernie Francis, and I talked to him briefly on Facebook. We sent a few messages back and forth. Maybe about 2-3 years ago. And he's a real interesting guy. I mean, he's a mixed media artist. And before he was using kind of a combination of like watercolor, acrylic, pen, color pencil, and gold leaf material, actually adding gold leaf, into his pieces and things. And now, he's doing a lot of oil painting, but on like a heavy duty watercolor or mixed media paper. So he's not painting on. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is this the one that's got the color pen and acrylic mixed, the mixed media? This portrait here?
Well, now this is a he's doing like acrylic and oil on paper. Okay.
On paper.
On paper, yeah, on like a really heavy duty watercolor paper. And I'm going to blow this up so we can kind of take a, okay. There we go. Okay, good. And notice what's going on in the background. See, and how loose, he laid in this background with this loose color. And then very meticulously, came back in and put this kind of floral design, on top of it. Whoop. Okay. All the way through the painting. And then he picked up that, okay. Making little boxes here. And I picked up that same kind of, floral design and things through the fabric. And with his use of, layering the paint and letting some of the underlying colors show through, it's got a nice sense of transparency to the fabric. And then he's painting, the flesh tones, really nicely modeled, rendered, nice strong light and shadow. And if you kind of look, again, it's a very different technique, say, than like Scott Waddell that we just saw, right? But it still kind of relies on those same basic principles. He's creating form, as he, lays those values in and changing not only the value, but the temperature, as he moves across the surface. Okay? Now, this is a little more typical of some of his early work, but he used to do a lot of birds.
I like that.
Yeah, and if you notice, the statue was kind of in focus, but the bird is like really sharp. And everything else, in and around the bird is just, it's a suggestion. It's a suggestion that it's there. See? He doesn't really bother to make leaf shapes or anything, but, he implies or suggests that, there are plants and things back there in the background with these, very loose brushstrokes. And the same thing with the water. Does he really take the time, to paint like a ripple pattern or anything on the water? No. But with the change of color, and the layering, one color over another, again, he kind of suggests that there's reflection and movement, to the surface.
It looks like it's mixed media. It looks like that's a cutout. The statue looks like a cutout, and the bird looks like a cutout that's painted placed it onto the canvas.
Yeah.
Whether it is or not, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, and it's not a collage piece. It's basically, again, he's using like a water media, like an acrylic in this case, to do these loose kind of abstract washes, and even to begin to develop, some of the textures and shapes and forms, in the painting. And then he's working over it, with oil paint. You know, so I would say that that bird's, you know, probably part acrylic, part oil.
Yeah, but the statue looks so, the lines look so hard. So the outline looks like they're just hard lines that make you think that it's something that's cut out and pasted on.
Right. Yeah. Or a very hard object. You know.
Maybe a very hard object. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, you know, marble or concrete would be. And so, you know, he's got a kind of a sharper outline around it.
Yes. But if that's all painted all acrylic, then that's fantastic for sure. if the little statue and bird showing the two different types of texture, that would be magnificent job. Well done.
Yeah, he's got some nice work. You know, the figure. Okay. Now, when you look at the overall piece, you know, it's got a very nice feeling to it. You know, it's parts of it are kind of dimensional, parts of it are kind of flat, right? You know, again, you know, he's taken a lot of care, you know, to turn form, you know, across the figure, the face. You know, I'm not totally convinced about that foot, you know, right there. It's probably, to me, the weak point of the painting.
Why is it that doesn't even look like shadow? It looks like a burn.
I'm sorry, what?
It doesn't even look like shadow. It looks like a burn.
Okay. Yeah.
I know it's not, but you know, it has the appearance of an injury.
Yeah. Yeah.
The foreshortening is missing here.
Yeah. Yeah. I have more of a problem, not necessarily the way it's painted, as far as the value and stuff like that. But yeah, the size relationship. It's like the leg coming closer to us, I would think would be bigger, you know?
Bigger, yes.
Yeah, to really bring that foot forward. So that I kind of find that in a way kind of flattening the painting out to me. I mean, you know, the face itself and the hair and it's really nicely done, you know, beautifully painted. But it's the combination, you know, with the leg. It just doesn't seem to fit. It's like if I take the leg out, the painting works a lot better, you know. So, but yeah, again, you know, this is another one of these oil mixed media on paper. And he's done a whole series, you know, of these. And they're really nicely done. You know, beautiful brushwork and movement and color. You know, all the way through. And then this is, you know, this is some of his work that I began to see a couple of years ago that really interested me. And you know, in looking at these pieces and looking at what he's doing now, he's definitely improved his technique and his ability, his drawing ability and ability to kind of create volume and form. You know, in looking at, you know, this robin now, which at the time, you know, I was fairly impressed with the whole idea of the gold leaf and, you know, and then the paint surface and the bird, you know, I thought was pretty well done. But now, yeah, I'm looking at it, yeah, you know, the drawing isn't nearly as strong, and the anatomy of the bird didn't seem to really understand the separation of, say, the head, the neck, and the body of the bird quite as much, you know, in this particular piece. So, I mean, you know, he's making a lot of progress, you know, his work is changing, it's evolving. It's that thing that we all hope we keep doing, you know, as you do this, you know, getting better. Now, this is before he was using oil paint. And so this is kind of a combination of acrylic and watercolor and colored pencil, you know, on, again, you know, this is a heavy watercolor paper that he's working on. And the interesting thing also that caught my notes a couple of years ago in looking at his pieces, he did this very elaborate calligraphy, you know, on a lot of his pieces. It was just kind of part of the work. And he seems to kind of moved away from the calligraphy part of it now.
I like those leaves.
Oh yeah, they were beautifully painted. You know, the bird and the branch, everything was, you know, very nicely rendered on this. And see, you know, he really kind of pulled off the bird here, I think, much better than he did that cardinal just that we looked at previously. But yeah, look at the flowers. You know, they're monochromatic in a sense, but with the value change, you know, you still get a sense of the form and the structure and the anatomy of the flower. Same thing is true with the bird and the feathered surfaces and the direction that the feathers are running in. Really, really nicely done. Pardon?
I see. I can't get my mute off.
Oh, well. All right.
I don't know what's going on. I'm mute.
Well, I can hear you.
Oh, really? Because it's saying I'm muted. But anyway, I was just saying that the bird is getting ready to take off.
Yeah.
That 2009 in the corner, is that the date?
Yeah.
Well, he sure did that fancy.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You know, his you know, incorporating some of this calligraphy into it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, was kind of a big part of a lot of the early work that he did. I'm trying to remember what his background. I think he had kind of like he was kind of like Elon. He was kind of, I think he had kind of an engineering background, you know, some kind of technical background that he came from, and started making, and this, again, this is one of his earlier pieces. And again, the thing that really interested me is that he was playing with the surface and using like these metal, you know, these metal leaves and applying it to the surface with paint. And he, instead of using oil paint, he was mainly using watercolor and acrylic at first.
What are metal leaves?
It's like you can get these sheets of foil, like gold leaf, but you now you can get all kinds of things. You know, they come in silver. Sometimes they have like, you know, these. They're really beautiful, and they have like all kind of color in them, but it's like a foil, and you can collage it down to a surface, like a canvas or a piece of wood or a piece of paper, you know, and then add.
I have the gold leaf, but I never saw this texture.
Well, and here's the thing. See, a lot of this texture that you see, I think he built with like a gel medium or, you know, kind of like an acrylic medium. You know, he made this rougher kind of surface here. And then he laid the leaf over it, over the top of that surface, except for where he was going to put the wood and the bird. See? And then he actually, you know, added color and paint back over the leaf as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's made several passes at this.
Beautiful.
You know, and even this, I mean, there's a fascinating texture up here. You know, it looks kind of like, you know, the paint surface is fractured, you know, and become kind of flaky. up there.
Yeah.
But it's a really nice contrast to the texture and stuff that he's got going on in the reeds, you know, on the bark itself, you know, which is really pretty convincingly painted. You know, the same thing with the feathers and things on the bird. You know, they're all very nicely done. Yeah, brushes, lots of brushes. Yeah. This is again, you know, one of the earlier pieces that he did. And so he's got, you know, this kind of rainbow flag, you know, and he's got this image kind of emerging through it. And so again, you know, my guess is that this was probably painted probably initially as a monochromatic painting, like an underpainting. And notice too, he's incorporated, you know, calligraphy into this as well, you know, on the clothing that she's wearing. Now that would drive me crazy, frankly, you know, I mean, just doing that much. Evidently, you know, he's a very meticulous, very patient kind of guy, you know, I mean, he likes pattern and calligraphy and, you know, all this stuff.
Looks like he put a wash over it.
Yeah, and then, yeah, once his monochromatic piece was done, I'm guessing that the color was laid on as
yes,
over it.
A wash, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's kind of important that we kind of can figure out a little bit of how some of these things develop.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of the value of looking at a lot of this stuff is that, you know, you look at it and, you know, you can begin to see kind of the process.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you ideas about your own process, you know, and how you approach. Again, you know, you can see areas where this gold leaf, you know, it's either gold leaf or gold paint. And this looks more like paint than leaf to me. And he's had a couple of different metallic paints here that he's added in. But again, you know, really building up and interesting layers and surfaces on these.
What I think is interesting about this type of work is that sometimes the artist has no idea of what he's going to do when he gets started. And it kind of evolves as he goes along, and what kind of little marks to put or ribbons to put or the colors to add that he's adding on, like the gold leaf and the blue around the face, and just begin to evolve as to what might work best here.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know what this, like a white collar she has on her dress, but it's really interesting in that respect.
Yeah, yeah, it looks like something that was kind of lacy,
mm-hmm.
because he's letting a lot of the color from underneath, you know, kind of show through. But
yeah, I don't know if they start from a live model or just a photo of someone, of a photo of some woman or a photo of a scene or not.
Yeah.
So
yeah, with him it's hard to say. I don't think he does a lot of like work from life. You know, yeah, I don't really think that that's his thing. You know, he kind of approaches it, I think, more sort of illustrative, where he'll work with like photo images and things like that. You know, like in this case, a bird. And again, you know, you can, you know, looking at the process, one of the issues when you're using metal leaves and things like that is that a lot of your objects tend to end up kind of hard edged because of where the metal leaf starts and then where the paint begins. And so it kind of gives it that cutout feeling. Because it's really hard to blend that paint, you know, back into the leaf and soften those edges. So, But again, really interesting surfaces. You can see this is not a flat surface. This has got these patterns raised in it, and that leaf is laid over it. And then, because of the material he was using, and it probably wasn't totally dry when he laid the leaf over it, you could see this crackling effect. Where as it's dried and shrank, it's taken that leaf and it's made it flaky and kind of brittle. So. This was a big thing for him, a while back. He was doing a lot of these kind of watercolory, images of birds' nests. And some of these were really beautiful. And I like his approach to these. Yeah. I mean, this kind of reminds me of some of the work that a local artist here does by the name of Philip Carpenter. And, he does these drawings, on these very large sheets of paper. And they're basically vignettes like this. It's just an object and it's on a white background, very simple. Now this actually looks and appears as though it was painted on a piece of wood. Like this is a piece of like birch wood that he's actually painted this on rather than paper. Another bird piece. And you can kind of see the use of like the watercolor, the colored pencil, gold leaf, probably, in combination with acrylic paint, maybe even oil paint at this point. This is another one of those, sort of Renaissance Gothic type series that he did. And that's another thing I really like about his work is he's very organized in ways, and he works in these series. He'll do a whole series of birds. He'll do a series of birds' nests. He'll do, some of the images from Japan, the Japanese ladies in the kimonos and things like that. But he's very consistent, and he'll do, like I said, a whole series rather than just doing one. He'll use those same processes and techniques, and he'll do a body of work. One of his drawings. And this is a close-up of one of the pieces. And if you look at the surface, the skin tones, things like that, you can see where he's used the paint, but then he's worked back over that paint surface with this colored pencil, or a whole series of colored pencils, different colors, but just to like shift the temperature and the value. But, really nice paint surface on them. Another, drawing, life drawing, I believe. I would have to guess. More of his birds. And again, this is, some pretty early work of his. And this was more the watercolor and colored pencil phase that he was using. And it's a really, really effective technique. I mean, it works well. Another one where he did I'm guessing a pretty complete underpainting. And then he worked over it with a glaze. And this looks like from, you know, the image actually came from one of the earlier paintings that he had done. Then, you know, figure drawing. Bird's nest on a piece of wood again. All right. Another figure drawing. Watercolor study of a statue. And again, you know, I think this, let's see, what says like 2011, I think. Blow it up. Actually, it looks like 2016. Okay. Still life. And again, this looks like watercolor. Maybe some color pencil and stuff in it.
Charles, what is this artist's name?
Aaron Francis.
Say again?
Aaron.
Aaron, okay.
Or no, Ernie Francis, right?
Oh.
Here, got some pieces down here with his name on it. Come on, toward the bottom. Let's keep going. Where are you? Like I said, I've got a lot of work done. Yeah, Ernie Francis. Okay.
Is he known for watercolor artist?
No. He's known, you know, mainly as a mixed media artist.
He works with clay too, sculptor.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Oh, okay. He's just copying somebody's sculpture.
Yeah, but yeah, this is you know, a very, very different style, see, for him. Now this is in 2020. It's very graphic. You know. See, so his, I guess the look of his work and his style, you know, change. And again, you know, he's doing these series of works. And this is one of the more recent pieces that I saw. It was beautifully done.
Did you show that other one, the lady with the flowers on her hair? Would you show that again?
Mm-hmm. Ernie Francis.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a little more kind of moody and kind of dark feeling. You know, but really beautiful image. But yeah, more color in this one. And I like the way, you know, just kind of the looseness of the application of the paint.
He got something they call him sedition art. What that mean?
He has what?
They say Ernie Francis, sedition art. What that mean?
I don't know. Where are you reading that?
In here in Google. I was going down to the Ernie Francis artist, the sedition art.
Yeah. I don't know. I hadn't read that article on him. Yeah, look at the surface on that. Now that's from that painting with the robin. This is a little close up. But if you look at the paint surface, you know, you can see where the metal leaf has been laid over an already kind of pre-existing texture that had been probably laid down. My guess is that you put that down as an acrylic, like like a gel medium or something like that, and let it dry, then put the surface over it. And then again, you know, this is kind of watercolor and colored pencil. You can kind of see the pencil work on top of these. Yeah, same thing with the leaf. So he's doing, you know, some really, really nice stuff. And he tends to like nature, you know, particularly birds. But then he also does, you know, some really, really good architectural type stuff as well. And then, you know, more of the calligraphy.
Wow.
Calligraphy.
Yeah.
I used to dislike calligraphy when I was in grammar school.
Well, I still dislike it.
Well, we had to do it. We had to buy the book and do those letters. I remember that.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I love mosaic.
Yeah. Well, this is out of what, like his Renaissance series, and it does. It feels like mosaic up here. Really, really interesting. And you know, that's the thing is with his work, it's like any part of a series that you look at. You know, he's always sort of like changing up his process and his technique and experimenting and playing. And, you know, that's one of the things that, you know, I try to encourage all of you guys to do is, you know, play with using, you know, different media and different paint surfaces and combine them and see what they'll do, you know, how you can use them together. Because you can really come up with some really unique, you know, fascinating, creative images. You know, just because of, you know, what you play with and how you play with it.
Bob and Wanda are good at experimenting with different media, especially Bob. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, this guy's working on watercolor paper, and then he's working on wood, you know, and again, you know, he's always changing things up, you know, looking at a different, kind of a different approach, you know. It's like, you know, how do I manage watercolor on a piece of wood, right? But he does.
Yeah.
And, you know, I wouldn't think of a piece of birch.
There's Notre Dame in Paris.
Wood, you know, as a great surface to do watercolor on.
No, I mean those doors.
Yeah.
Entrance.
Yeah. Some doves.
That's pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a wonderful sense of composition and design. You know, really nice pieces all the way through. And like I said, I've got lots of them, so we could keep going forever, but let's not, you know. Well, that's like a postage stamp. Looking for, actually, we've seen this image. Remember, it had the rainbow glazed over the top of it. So this is, you know, the full color kind of painted version of it. But the exact same image. I mean, you know, it had that very same kind of pattern, the same woman, the calligraphy, the dress. It was all there. It was just all monochromatic, and then it had these color bands going across it. This is, you know, a full color painting. So you see, he's not adverse to doing several versions of something and trying different things with it. playing with how he approached it.
If I got something looking so excellent like this painting is, I don't think I want to put anything else over it.
Oh,
I can stand to destroy it.
Yeah, well, this is probably like 1 or 4 or 5 of these that he did, right? And he did one as a monochromatic and then put color bands across it. This one he did as a full color, sort of watercolor or acrylic oil combination. And he's probably got several other versions of this.
Well, I wasn't too happy with his hands on the first one. I'm not too happy with his hands on the second one here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Charles, can you show the one of the Native American?
This one right here? Yeah. Yeah, again, I think this is a fairly recent piece that he did. And again, I think this is that oil acrylic combination on watercolor paper or heavy mixed media paper. And he's taking that paper and peeling it. He's got, some kind of underlying texture that he built up first, before he started working the image directly over it.
I like it, very nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyhow, we can, I think this is the end. Oh yeah, there's this piece. Some of these came out like postage stamps, so are nice big images. Yeah, it's too pixelated to really mess with. Okay, let's see. But,
that one too.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Again, one of the things that I really, really find impressive about him is just the variety of the work, but also, he keeps playing with the process. Again, this is a watercolor and Prismacolor pencil piece. And
Very light.
Yeah, and you can see, you can kind of see the use of the media there. And then others, they kind of make you question, what the media was. But really nice. And Jimi Hendrix again, we've seen him earlier today several times.
Yeah, that's the other guy that you showed before.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Jack.
Yeah, Moorfield. Yeah, did a couple of Hendrix, but this is Ernie Francis.
Oh,
and
this is Francis. Okay.
Yeah, again, the use of the calligraphy. Yeah, and it's a whole totally different approach. Same subject, but yeah, a whole totally different approach now. So you see, you get different artists, interpreting. There's a Jimi Hendrix, kind of a lot like Andy Warhol. But in Ernie's, way of kind of distilling it. So I guess that's kind of about all we'll look at for today. Any thoughts about his work? Anybody find anything really interesting? Anything you want to run out and start playing with, trying?
Yeah, it's a good work.
Yeah.
Like the birds and the fruit and natural things. Yeah.
You think anything?
No, I won't be able to work to do that kind of job.
No.
That good. No, I can try, but I will be awful.
Yeah. You don't want to try doing some calligraphy or,
No, I have trouble with calligraphy when I was in grammar school. No.
You're not in grammar school anymore, you know. Like maybe you've gotten better at it. You know, you try something new. So
I was obligated to do calligraphy in that time.
okay, well you're not obligated now. You can do it for fun. So
Let Robert do it. He's better than me.
let who do it?
Robert, Bob, he's better than me.
Oh, let Bob do it? Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
You want to do calligraphy?
Well, I did some printing on this project we were given Friday, so that's as close to calligraphy as I'll get.
Okay. All right.
Be like me, buy it from the store.
Well, you could do that too. You know, you can get, you know, like press on letters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So Charles, on the design that he made with the woman with the foot that there was a conversation about,
yeah.
Could you, on the background, could you frisket that background in and then the whole background design in, and then go over it with your paints?
Yeah, you could. You could.
But that would be laborious, right?
It might be. Are you talking about frisking it, you know, doing the background design and then laying down a frisket so that when he's working with, let's say he switches to oil paint, that it's blocked off so he doesn't get it on the background surface?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a safe way of working. A lot of that too, though, would depend on the surface you were working on. You know, if you're working on a piece of like heavyweight watercolor paper, I might be a little shy about putting down frisket on, because you know when you start lifting the frisket off, depending on how aggressive the tack is with that frisket, you might end up damaging that watercolor paper surface. Usually, you know, on watercolor paper, stuff like that, if they're going to frisket something, they use either rubber cement, or they use like a watercolor, or it's like a liquid frisket. It's kind of like this milky white type stuff. You brush it on, you know, fill in the areas that you want to protect, and then you let it totally dry. And then you work another layer of color on it. And then after you're done working the color and stuff, you take like they have an eraser for like rubber cement, and you just lift it, you know, off of the surface, and it comes off pretty cleanly without you, you know, having to peel a sheet of frisket off and, you know, pulling up the tooth of the paper.
I didn't realize you could use frisket with oil paints. I thought that was only with watercolor. No?
No, I think you can use it, you know, with really almost any kind of media. And again, you know, it depends on the frisket you're talking about. Are you talking about like the sheets of frisket that you cut, you know, to block off areas? Or are you looking at liquid frisket? Are you looking at rubber cement? There's lots of different types of frisketing material out there to work with.
What is frisket?
A frisket is any kind of, anything that's going to peel off the board or the paper.
Frisket.
A mask. You know, it's basically a mask. So that you're masking off areas of the painting so that you're not getting paint on it, and you can work on a smaller area and apply, you know, more color without getting it everywhere. That kind of answer your question?
Yes, I think so. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the brisket, the meat that you cook.
Oh, no, that's brisket.
Oh.
Brisket. Yeah. Yeah, brisket is, well, I think Frisket is actually like it's a product name.
Mhm.
And I used to use it all the time, you know, as an illustrator when I was doing airbrush. And so you would lay a sheet of it down there and you would take an X-Acto knife and you'd, you know, kind of trace over your drawing with the knife and cut out all the different parts so that as you were airbrushing, you could lift a piece and work in an area. And then after you were done, you would put the Frisket back down over to protect it and, you know, lift the next piece and kind of work in that area. But, you know, I've also used things like rubber cement. And with oil paint, actually rubber cement works just fine. You know, you can thin it, you can paint it onto the surface. And then after the oil paint, you know, begins to dry, what ends up happening with the rubber cement is that where you put or apply the oil paint over it, it'll begin to kind of shrink and crackle a little bit. And you go back and you take, you know, like your rubber cement eraser, and or you just take, if you had old rubber cement, you make a ball, you don't throw it away. You just keep making a ball of it, and then that becomes your rubber cement eraser, and it helps you pick up the rubber cement off the surface. So you lift the Frisket off, you know, after all the paint is dry. Now with oil paint, you know, the problem with that is you've got areas frisketed off with rubber cement. You may have to wait a week, you know, before you can go back in and lift those areas up and not keep spreading oil paint around. So you got to be patient with stuff like that. It's a process, right? Anybody got anything else they want to talk about? Any comments about the work? Anybody inspired by anything in particular, since we're talking about inspiration today?
I am inspired by Scott Waddell's process. I think I will go in and try to work on that technique for a while.
Okay. Maybe you're on Wednesday. Can you be here on Wednesday? Or is that the day of your class?
Yes, no, I can be here on Wednesday.
Okay. I'll have to look for them, but I've downloaded some of the videos of Scott's. And so I've got like longer actual videos on my computer that I can just play back. So they weren't broken up as what we were watching. There was something wrong with that video on YouTube. It wasn't our buffering or anything like that. It was something in the video, you know, how it was, you know, put together or something. Because we didn't lose any of the audio, but some of the visual, it's kind of like it would freeze and then you'd kind of catch up, and yeah, it was kind of weird. But like I said, I think I've got like 4 or 5 of his videos that I've downloaded, and they're pretty, you know, they're pretty instructional. You know, they're interesting to watch. Like I said, it's, you know, I wouldn't go about it the same way he does, but you know, that's fine. It's, you know, just a different approach to it. But maybe we'll watch one of those on Wednesday. Okay.
Okay.
So you get a little more in-depth information.
All right. We'll see you in the morning. I'll see you in the morning. Hello. Bye, everybody.
All right. Well, everybody have a good week. You know, hopefully we'll see you back here tomorrow at about 2 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah.
And some people who started sending in some work, you know, go ahead and send in stuff if you want to talk about it. You know, Jackie, you got some nice drawings you sent in. You know, we'll talk about those tomorrow. And Eloise, I think you sent something in, didn't you?
I just sent the drawing in that I was doing. I have since then painted it, so it's so small. It's difficult for me to get in some of the finer points of the painting.
Okay. Well, you could do it bigger. You don't have to do it small.
Yeah, I could.
It's up to you. You know.
Right.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? You know, Bye. Have a good day.
Bye, you too.
Bye, thank you.